Hey guys, it's story time with Mems, and I'm Mems. I decided that I wanted to start reading some chapter books because I think that you'll have a good time building your imagination by listening to the words. So the first book that I've chosen to start with for a chapter book is The Mouse and the Motorcycle by Beverly Cleary. So unfortunately, there's not a lot of pictures in this book, but when there are any pictures, I'll give it a show. Otherwise, you can just lay back and enjoy the story and get the visual in your mind. It starts out with a letter from Kate DiCamillo. Dear reader, when I was 8 years old, my brother and I had a mouse named Pinky. He was a white mouse with a pink tail and pink feet and pink eyes. He lived in a cage in my brother's room. One morning, I went to greet Pinky, and he was not there. Pinky has escaped, I shouted. Oh, for the love of Pete, said my mother. There's no way that mouse got out of the cage, said my brother. It's impossible. But it was not impossible. Pinky had somehow gotten out of his cage. He had disappeared entirely. My mother and my brother and I searched for him. We looked under dressers, in closets, beneath all the beds. We overturned clothes hampers and emptied out drawers. Nanette, our dog, followed us from room to room as we searched. Pinky, I shouted. Pinky, come home. Don't be stupid, said my brother. Mice don't know their names. My brother was older than I was. He thought he knew more than I did. He thought he knew everything. I can't believe I paid money for a mouse, said my mother. I can't believe I bought a mouse. And now he's loose in the house doing who knows what. Which was exactly what I was thinking. Who knew what Pinky was doing? I had read Beverly Cleary's book, The Mouse and the Motorcycle, and I knew that the objects and people and mice of the world were not at all as they seemed on the surface. I knew that in the right circumstances, mice could do impossible, improbable things. For instance, they could ride toy motorcycles, and they could communicate with people. Mice could, if they wanted to, talk. Of course, I said none of this to my brother or my mother. They wouldn't have believed me anyway. We did not find Pinky that day, or the next day, or the next. What am I supposed to do here, said my mother. Call an exterminator? Set a trap? You can't just let a mouse run around willy-nilly in your house. He's probably dead anyway, said my brother. He probably starved to death. I said nothing. I thought it was just fine to let a mouse run loose in the house, and I didn't believe for a minute that Pinky had starved to death. I believed that he was off having an adventure. I imagined him climbing a lamp cord, chatting and feasting with the other mice in our house. I imagined him riding a toy motorcycle down our long hallway, just like Ralph did in The Mouse and the Motorcycle. On the morning of the 4th day of Pinky's disappearance, Nanette started barking at the refrigerator. She stood with her legs spread out and her head down low. She barked and barked in a very determined way. Now what? Said my mother. My brother got a flashlight and shone it into the crack between the refrigerator and the wall. And there was Pinky. His little eyes were glowing. For the love of Pete, said my mother. My brother shut the dog out of the kitchen. My mother put a glob of peanut butter on a blue saucer, and I placed the saucer close to the refrigerator, right next to the crack between the refrigerator and the wall. And then I sat down on the floor, cross-legged. I waited, and after what seemed like a very long time, Pinky crept out, his whiskers twitching hopefully. He made his way to the blue saucer. I picked him up and put him back in the cage. This is the last mouse we get, said my mother. I can tell you that much. Don't ask me to get another mouse. When we got a different cage, a better cage, and Pinky did not escape again. Every day I went to visit him. I stared into his little pink eyes. Why do you keep staring at that mouse, said my brother. I'm just looking at him, I said. I'm admiring him. I'm glad we found him. But really, truthfully, I was hoping that Pinky would speak. I was hoping that he would tell me what had happened when he was out of the cage and running loose in the world. He didn't speak, but it didn't matter really, because here's the thing. I believed he could speak, and I believed that because of Beverly Cleary. A good story changes how you look at the world. It encourages you to look past the obvious, the everyday. A good story grants you the permission to imagine. A good story gives you hope. It has been almost 50 years since I read about Ralph for the first time, and here I am, still believing that if I am quiet enough, if I believe enough, if I hope enough, a mouse might talk to me. That's more than good. That's great. And so begins the story she's talking about, The Mouse and the Motorcycle. Chapter 1, The New Guests. Keith, the boy in the rumpled shorts and shirt, did not know he was being watched as he entered room 215 of the Mountain View Inn. Neither did his mother and father, who both looked hot and tired. They had come from Ohio and for 5 days had driven across plains and deserts over mountains to the old hotel in the California foothills, 25 miles from Highway 40. There's a picture. I told you I'd share. The fourth person entering room 215 may have known he was being watched, but he did not care. He was Matt, 60 if he was a day, who at the moment was the bellboy. Matt also replaced worn-out light bulbs, renewed washers and leaky faucets, carried trays for people who telephoned room service to order food sent to their rooms, and sometimes prevented children from hitting one another with croquet mallets on the lawn behind the hotel. Now Matt's right shoulder sagged with the weight of one of the bags he was carrying. "Here you are, Mr. Gridley. Rooms 215 and 216, he said, setting the smaller of the bags on a luggage rack at the foot of the double bed before he opened a door into the next room. "I expect you and Mrs. Gridley will want room 216. It's a corner room with twin beds and a private bath." He carried the heavy bag into the next room where he could be heard opening windows. Outside, a chipmunk chattered in a pine tree and a chickadee whistled, "Phoebe." The boy's mother looked critically around room 215 and whispered, "I think we should drive back to the main highway. There must be a motel with a vacancy sign someplace. We didn't look long enough." "Not another mile," answered the father. "I'm not driving another mile on a California highway on a holiday weekend. Did you see the way that truck almost forced us off the road?" "Dad, did you see those two fellas on motorcycles?" began the boy and stopped, realizing he should not interrupt an argument. "But this place is so old," protested the boy's mother, "and we have only 3 weeks for our whole trip. We had planned to spend the 4th of July weekend in San Francisco, and we wanted to show Keith as much of the United States as we could." "San Francisco will have to wait, and this is part of the United States. Besides, this used to be a very fashionable hotel," said Mr. Gridley. "People came from miles around." 50 years ago," said Mrs. Gridley, "and they came by horse and buggy." The bellboy returned to room 215. "The dining room opens at 6:30, sir. There is a ping pong in the game room, TV in the lobby, and croquet on the back lawn. I'm sure you will be very comfortable." Matt, who had seen guests come and go for many years, knew there were two kinds: those who thought the hotel was a dreadful old barn of a place, and those who thought it charming and quaint, so quiet and restful. "Of course we will be comfortable," said Mr. Gridley, dropping some coins into Matt's hand for carrying the bags. "But this big old hotel is positively spooky." Mrs. Gridley made one last protest. "It's probably full of mice." Matt opened the window wide. "Mice? Oh no, ma'am. The management wouldn't stand for mice." "I wouldn't mind a few mice," the boy said as he looked around the room. at the high ceiling, the knotty pine walls, and the carpet so threadbare that many of its roses had almost entirely faded, and one chair with the antimacassar on its back, the wash basin and towel racks in the corner of the room. "I like it here," he announced. "A whole room to myself. Usually, I just get a cot in the corner of a motel room." His mother smiled, relenting. Then she turned to Matt. "I'm sorry. It's just that it was so hot crossing Nevada, and we are not used to mountain driving. Back on the highway, the traffic was bumper to bumper. I'm sure we'll be very comfortable." After Matt had gone, closing the door behind him, Mr. Gridley said, "I need a rest before dinner. 400 miles of driving in that mountain traffic. It was too much. And if we're going to stay for a weekend, I had better unpack," said Mrs. Gridley. "At least I'll have a chance to do some drip drying." Alone in room 215 and unaware that he was being watched, the boy began to explore. He got down on his hands and knees and looked under the bed. He leaned out the open window as far as he could and greedily inhaled deep breaths of pine-scented air. He turned the hot and cold water on and off in the wash basin and slipped one of the small bars of paper-wrapped soap into his pocket. Under the window, he discovered a knot hole in the pine wall down by the floor, and squatting, poked his finger into the hole. When he felt nothing inside, he lost interest. Next, Keith opened his suitcase and took out an apple and several small cars, a sedan, a sports car, and an ambulance about 6 inches long, and a red motorcycle half the length of the cars, which he dropped on the striped bedspread before he bit into the apple. He ate the apple noisily in big chomping bites, and then laid the core on the bedside table between the lamp and the telephone. Keith began to play, running his cars up and down the bedspread, pretending that the stripes on the spread were highways and making noises with his mouth. Vroom, vroom for the sports car. Wee, wee for the ambulance. And for the motorcycle, up and down the stripes. Once Keith stopped suddenly and looked quickly around the room as if he expected to see something or someone, but when he saw nothing unusual, he returned to his cars. Vroom, vroom, bang, crash. The sports car hit the sedan and rolled over off the highway stripe. The motorcycle came roaring to the scene of the crash. "Keith," his mother called from the next room, "time to get washed for dinner." "Okay." Keith parked his cars in a straight line on the bedside table beside the telephone, where they looked like a row of real cars, only much, much smaller. The first thing Mrs. Gridley noticed when she and Mr. Gridley came into the room was the apple core on the table. She dropped it with a thunk into the metal wastebasket beside the table as she gave several quick little sniffs of the air and said, looking perplexed, "I don't care what the bellboy said. I'm sure this hotel has mice." "I hope so," muttered Keith. That's the end of chapter 1. Stay tuned for chapter 2. Bye, guys.